welcome thank you, Nikki, for recording it. So today we're welcoming Dr. Brennan from Penn State University. So she is a professor and currently serving as the interim associate head of the Department for Civil and Environmental Engineering there. And her research background is in environmental engineering. We're excited to hear her talk titled Drawdown and Effective Science Communication Strategies. This is actually going to tie in well with what was shared during our recent HDR Ecosystem Conference on Science Communication. So we're really looking forward to it. Yeah?
Good. Okay.
So thank you so much, Dr. Brennan, for joining us. And please, you may feel free to start.
Okay. I will try my best to make this work here. Okay, so again, I apologize if you're just joining. I've never used this particular interface before, so I'm a little clunky and slow. So if you don't see what I'm trying to share, then please stop me. Okay. Now, are you seeing, is this correct?
Yeah, maybe you want to do the full screen or presentation mode, whichever.
I think I did the thing that happened last time, so that's still incorrect. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let me try this again. I'm so sorry. This is feels so backward to me. Okay. So I think if I share, let me try it this way, share the window. Do you see that?
Yeah, we can see the window. Oh. Nikki, how did she do it before? What did she share? How did she share it before and we're able to see the full screen?
I think it was the entire screen, and then you were
rather than the window.
Yeah, and then you're able to do the flip to the presentation mode.
Entire screen. Okay, so it's entire screen for the presentation. There we go.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. Okay. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to give this talk today. So I had the great honor of being able to come to the all hands meeting in Alaska this June, and I presented a variation on this talk there. So I talked only about the Project Drawdown portion. And while we were there as an advisory board member, one of the things we discussed as a board for the iHARP group was the advantages of really focusing on effective science communication. And that's one thing that Project Drawdown does really, really well. And so I was able to draw on that a little bit during my talk there in June, but I was invited back today to talk about it a little bit more because Penn State's role with Project Drawdown involves emphasizing the importance of science communication to our participating students. And by extension, we also work on this with our faculty. So you're never too young and you're never too old to improve your communication skills. It can be so powerful, right? For everything from, doing well in a class to when you're working, getting, a bid on a project or getting your grant funded or applying for a new job and getting a promotion. I mean, the benefits of effective presentation extend throughout your entire career. So especially though, when dealing with topics as important as climate change, like we do in this iHARP work, it really can't be understated, right? To get that message out to the public and to get it to where it can be heard and policy can be created to respond to all of the great work that you all are doing. That's really the mission here of conveying some of these communication strategies. So I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of Project Drawdown because I already did that in June and I believe those presentations are recorded. So I'll just give you a brief overview for folks who might not have been there or have seen that recording. So if you're working anywhere in climate science, you should know about Project Drawdown because they are really making an effort to reach the public about not just climate change, but more importantly, what we can do about it. So this is a solutions-oriented approach. So they published this book, and I have the cover of it there for you. This is a New York Times bestseller published in 2017. And the reason they use the word drawdown is to indicate the moment at which our greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere stop climbing and start to go down. That pivot point, which we will get to someday, when those greenhouse gases start dropping, that's the moment of drawdown. And this is the whole mission of this organization, is to get strategies implemented to get to drawdown as quickly as possible. So this book, published in 2017, but of course technologies keep advancing. Our understanding of impacts is also advancing. Climate change is also advancing. So they published a subsequent drawdown review in 2020, where they've reanalyzed some of the data and made some additional comments. This wasn't published for purchase. This you can download for free off their website. It's just drawdown.org. And they started translating it into other languages because, you know, not everyone in the world speaks English. So first they translated it into Spanish and now into French, and hopefully they'll start doing some other very common languages. I'm hoping for some more Asian country languages coming soon. So this was Drawdown Review. Now, the whole point of Drawdown is to encourage the public and policymakers to implement strategies to reverse global warming today. These are proven strategies. And one of their ways that they are trying to convince people to do this, one through the books and the texts that they have available online, but also through their interface through video content. So I'm going to do probably a very ill-advised move considering how difficult it's been with me to share, but I'm going to stop sharing this and try to reshare here my web browser. Bear with me here. So I believe I can do this. Are you seeing my browser? Yes. Okay. So hopefully, hopefully you can hear this. Although, wait a minute. I noticed that there was an optimize for motion and video. So I'm going to reshare with that. Okay. This is just a 2-minute trailer for their video series. It's very compelling. Okay, here we go.
Sound. Is it just me? Dr. Brennan, I don't know if we can hear the sound. Dr. Brennan, no sound, yeah. Thank you.
Oh, no. Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, that didn't work. Anyway, I'm very sorry. This is a science communication problem we're having today. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's this. I didn't know we would have this interface. I'm so sorry. Well, we'll go back. I'll just go back into the slides then. Hold on. Before I.
Sherman shared something. He shared a YouTube link. Let's see.
So you could all watch it. So could you play that from your end?
I can play it, but let me see. Nikki, do you want to play it? Okay, that's the trailer.
Give me 1 second, see if I can play it.
Okay.
Is this what all, like University of Maryland, everyone uses this browser? Oh.
Yeah. Application.
I'm an outsider, very clearly.
Yeah, we can.
Could you hear it or no?
No, we couldn't.
All right. Well, that's all right. At least you know it's there. So they've done a fantastic job, even though I'm doing a terrible job of learning how to share it through this interface. Project Drawdown has done a fantastic job of creating video content to share this message. And what they have is a series, that was a trailer that maybe you can watch on your own time, but it's a trailer for a series of 6 videos that are very short. They're punchy. So you could, students could watch them on their own time. You could even play them in class. You could share them with a public event, but they're 15 to 20 minutes in length. And there's only one that talks about climate change itself. So if you needed a group to get up to speed on, what climate change is and how humans are causing it, you could play that little short video. But then the rest of the video series really talks about solutions and strategies and implementation of those solutions. So it's very positive approach. It's not really gloom and doom. It's more like we can change things. We just have to act. We just have to get policy in place, invest in these strategies, and we can reverse this problem. So let me go back and I will share the slides here again, hopefully. Okay. All right, so is that okay, or do I need to swap?
Good. It's okay.
That's good. Okay. All right. So you saw that their main emphasis throughout is that now is better than new. This is their whole slogan, so that we already do have the technologies to solve climate change. It's just a matter of implementing them. Some folks like to put all their eggs in some futuristic basket like carbon capture or something that may very well be impactful in the future, but that right now is not to the scale that we need it to really solve this problem. So they have modeled like global implementation of many different strategies. They have 100 described in the book, 80 are already at scale, and they've modeled those for practical application in different environments around the world. So they've done it from a practical perspective. So for example, they're not saying you can put solar panels, on the ocean or something like that. They'll have like wind farms in suitable places, solar in suitable places, different building infrastructure solutions in appropriate places. The other thing that they do is try to simplify the problem down to something that can be easily comprehended. So for example, this is one of their famous graphics that they use. And we know that there's greenhouse gas emissions from, thousands of different areas. But, there's that saying that if you want to teach someone and have someone remember something, they have to be able to count it on one hand. So they have these 5 different sources of greenhouse gases summarized in this really clear figure. So this is a great example of effective science communication, that they've grouped electricity production. 25% of our greenhouse gas sources are from electricity production. Another 24%, almost as much, from food, agriculture, and land use. 21% from industry, and so on. So they have those 5 sectors plus other there. But this is something that, a normal person might actually be able to remember this. And it also emphasizes how important things like food, agriculture, and land use are to our global climate. It's not all about fossil fuel burning. There's other sources of emissions that we really need to get a handle on. And so that's very clear and a really good use of science communication. They have their different strategies organized into technical, ecological, and social strategies in 9 different sectors. So you can reduce those 5 sources of emissions that we talked about. Those are 5 of the sectors. And then they have sinks that you can support. Like, for example, our coastal and ocean sinks, those water bodies are able to absorb a lot of carbon dioxide, for example, and reduce the effects of climate change. Engineered sinks, like we talked, carbon capture, et cetera, land sinks like forests. And then a very important sector that doesn't get as much attention as it should is within social equality. So this is providing equal access to health and education for everyone, regardless of gender, et cetera. And if we're able to lift everyone out of poverty, we will be able to better address this issue, because when people are in poverty, they're more concerned about meeting their daily needs, right? Not so much the environment. And they might be forced to make choices that are not the best for our whole planet. So that's a crucial piece here. Now, each of their 80 proven technologies they've modeled. They have an extensive set of modelers throughout the world that have been doing this. and they've measured these 4 things. They've measured the or modeled the total carbon dioxide equivalent reduction possible by implementing these technologies at the scale that's appropriate, how much it would cost to do that implementation, and then what kind of savings you could expect implemented over time. So the analogous example is, if you buy an LED light bulb and it costs a lot more than an old-fashioned incandescent bulb, but you're willing to do that because when you get your electricity bill at the end of the month, you will actually have spent much less money because that LED light bulb is so much more efficient. So you spend more upfront, but over time you're going to save money. And so that's the same with a lot of these drawdown solutions. It's all about improving efficiencies. And when you improve efficiency, you save money. So implementation costs, but then savings over time for the majority of the solutions. And then with that in mind, they can rank them all, but their ranking in their book is for the global ranking. Each individual community will have a different ranking depending on their needs, their specific geographic constraints. They might have solutions that work better in their location. So we have to keep that in mind as well. So I'm going to do this is the last time I'm going to swap sharing, but I want to show you one more thing on their website here and see if I can do this. So if I share, see if I can do this. Are you seeing my browser? Yes, right? Yes. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I went back to Project Drawdown. I'm not going to share a video now. I just wanted to show you, this is if you go onto Project Drawdown and you look for their table of solutions, you can see as you scroll down, they have their 80 solutions listed here on the left, what sector it falls into, electricity, transportation, if it's a land sink, food, agriculture, land use, etc. And then they have 2 scenarios listed here. And if I scroll, if you can see the units for this. So there's an asterisk here, and it's the gigatons of CO2 equivalent reduced or sequestered in 2 different scenarios. Scenario 1 is defined up here in the text. That's if you have a 2 degrees Celsius increase by the end of the century. Scenario 2 is if you can get to 1.5 Celsius only. So it's a more aggressive approach, so we don't have as much warming. And so you can see them all listed. Right now, you can have them either alphabetically. This is in reverse alphabetical order right now, but you can hit the top button for solutions and it'll go either A to W here, or you can switch it back and forth. Or the one I like is if you click on the scenario, it actually puts it in order of CO2 removed. So you can really see what's the most impactful. And so right here, you can see, here's our top 10 strategies right now from a global application perspective. And number 1 is reducing food waste, which just really blows a lot of people's mind because it's not a technical solution, but it has technical implications, right? And I think this is starting to become more mainstream. We're seeing more and more efforts to reduce waste, food waste, also reducing consumption of higher order mammals and getting more plant-rich diets. That has a huge impact globally. So that's saying, what you eat is more important than the type of car you drive or choose not to drive. That is absolutely true, right? So our food has a huge impact on global warming. And you can see there as it goes down, health and education, very important. All of these sectors, what I wanted to emphasize is that there's a range. There's some technical ones like wind turbines and solar panels, but there's also ones that are related to food, agriculture, land use, and social health and education. So really, we need the whole portfolio of solutions to solve this problem. And it also shows that everyone can help, right? Everyone can be part of the solution, no matter how small your individual contribution is, or if you're able to convince a family or a neighborhood or your network or your workplace or whatever it is, you can make a really tangible impact. So I wanted to share those solutions with you because that's often really insightful for people when they first see it. The other thing I want to show you before I stop sharing my browser, and then I promise I won't show it anymore, is you can also, on Project Drawdown, you can go to their table of solutions and having all the solutions listed here as panels. And I shared this up in Alaska. You might remember we had a very brief introduction to this, but I love this because it's very visual and students tend to really enjoy this if you do this in the classroom, if you're trying to extend your work to a general classroom, any audience. I do this in first year seminars all the way up to graduate students. It seems like everybody really enjoys this. But if you look here, here's our 9 different sectors, the sources, the 5 sources, the 3 sinks, and then our social, health, and education. If you click on any of them, it will rearrange these tiles below. So you can see now I'm looking all at electricity solutions. If I pick food, agriculture, and land use, I click on that, the tiles change, and now I can see those. The other thing is that once you click on these, like we could go to improved rice production, for example. I'll go to plant-rich diets because that's like number 2, right, on our most impactful drawdown solutions. If you click on one of those tiles, it'll take you to a whole write-up about it, which is similar to the book, not as exhaustive, but similar. And it'll talk to you, it'll speak to why a plant-rich diet is so important and what we can do about it. And so it has a very nice, easy to understand text. And then on the right side, it talks about how many CO2 equivalents you might be able to reduce through proper implementation of that solution. So it's just a wealth of knowledge. I really enjoy this, and being able to look at it this way, it gives you a really direct understanding of how many options we have to make an impact. And it really provides a great education. I learn every time I come to this website, I learn something new, you know, even though I've been working with them for so long. So I just wanted to let you know that that's there as a great resource, and there's so many different things you can do with it. So I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully for the last time here, I will reshare. Let me see. Got to get this up. Okay. Okay. Does that look correct?
Yes,
no?
it is. Mm-hmm.
It looks good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. Okay. All right. So Penn State, the university that I work for, they've collaborated with Project Drawdown. We have a memorandum of understanding that we work with them through our students and through our engagement with communities on implementation of drawdown strategies. So we started this research experiences for undergraduates program where we would recruit really talented undergraduates from all over the country, bring them to Penn State for an intensive 10-week summer program, and they would work with different faculty across all different colleges. I'm in engineering, but we would have participants in all different colleges across the university working on different strategies, you know, any of those drawdown solutions, or even ones that are related. They may not be specifically described on the drawdown website, but want strategies and solutions that are similar. In addition to the research that they do for 10 weeks, we also have all of these other opportunities. We talk about environmental justice and law and policy. We give them a lot of professional networking. We do community outreach. But we also, and I put it in red and in bold here, we spend a lot of time on science communication. And so the rest of my presentation today, which I'll try to condense for you, is just about the science communication that we share with these students. So this can apply for anyone, as I said in the introduction, not just undergraduates, like everyone at any stage in their career can improve on their science communication. So how do we do this? So these are some slides that I routinely share with this program and others for how to give effective oral presentations. And I'm sure if you're doing research, you know, you'll get a lot of help with writing, right? Your advisor, your project lead will help, you know, as you revise reports and proposals and manuscripts, you get that practice, but we don't spend as much time focusing on the oral presentations. And so I have this picture of Wonder Woman here because, you know, you should look at her and it evokes this feeling of confidence, right? Like, wow, she looks so sure of herself. And like, you know, she's, whatever she says, you're probably going to believe it, right? You know, she looks super confident. So I go through a series of discussions with the students to help them think about how to give effective oral presentations that are memorable and that are dynamic and engaging. And so we start by talking about the common pitfalls of normal PowerPoint presentations, and that we don't want death by PowerPoint. I share you know, I have various cartoons, but this is one I really love, you know, showing the executioner is just killing the poor person by showing PowerPoint slides. It's really horrible, but this is true. It can be totally boring, right? Everyone has these experiences more often than we'd like to admit. Yeah, that it can be painful. So I typically ask my audience, what are some of the ways that you've personally experienced that you find annoying or difficult to watch when looking at a horrible PowerPoint presentation? And people will shout out. I put one here, and this is intentionally meant to be small and fuzzy, and the colors are wrong. It's hard to read, but it's all the things you think of. Too much text, too much clip art, too many colors, and then things like, the presenter is reading the slide, they're turning their back to the audience. All of these things can be really, really annoying. But the number one thing I hear for technical presentations, too much text, right? And that the graphics are not sharing the main message. So those are some things we really need to work on. But there's also ways you can improve in your space. And I realize now we're on Zoom, and you've already witnessed some of the technical challenges that I've been having today, right? But if you're presenting in front of an audience, you can look at these two pictures. This is pretty typical for a classroom and a conference. And it's very easy to get lost in these presentations. I ask my students, what's wrong in these images? This is something you see every day when you go to school or you go to a conference. This is really typical. But if you step back and you look at it, this is not right. Looking at these students, they're all up there standing in a row, and the main presenter is trapped behind a podium. Now, I personally hate podiums because what they do to you is awful. They cut off more than half of your body. And, here in this virtual presentation, I'm only able to share with you my head. And actually right now I can't even see what you see because of this interface. I can't even see what you're seeing. I'm assuming you can still see my face and that you can see some of my hands, right? But being behind a podium is just as bad because you're losing all that power that you have in the rest of your body. So if you're fortunate enough to give a presentation in person, come out from behind the podium so people can see you. And it also draws your attention, right? People are like goldfish, although I think this is a misnomer now. They actually think goldfish are smart. But that saying that like goldfish, they lose attention every 3 seconds, right? And they just forget things. But people are that way too. We can't help it. We're busy, we're tired, we're distracted. We have things going on in our personal lives, whatever it is. If there's no movement in front of you for too long, your mind is going to drift. We can't help it. So by being mobile in front of the room and being able to walk, not fidget, but be able to move, that helps snap people's attention back to you. It can be really powerful, just a little movement in front of the audience. This one at the conference, I've gone to so many conferences like this, you don't even know where the presenter is. Like they're probably over here on the right, hiding behind, some table. Again, they've lost half of their power. A lot of audience members can't even see them. They're in the dark. If they would come out and use this center space here, they could even walk down this aisle. It takes some bravery to do that, but it makes the audience pay attention. All right, so that's a little subtle things that anyone can do to improve. These pictures, they're a little bit better. They're trying. This guy here on the left, he's come out from behind the computer, so you can see more of him. And she's also not behind the podium, so that's really great. But they're in the dark. And so sometimes people say, well, that's just the room. I can't help it. That's my classroom. That's my conference room. But actually, when you are presenting, you own that space. That's your house, right? You're inviting people to come into your house. So for those, 20, 30 minutes that you're in control, be in control. There might be a session moderator who might get a little nervous if you adjust the lights or, move things around, but chances are they'll be cool with it if it's not ideal. So I challenge folks, go into the room and own your space. You can adjust the lighting. You could even adjust the temperature. Sometimes you go into space and it's too hot, right? There's not enough airflow. If you get there early enough, you might be able to change that, right? So really take that to heart. You own that space. Make it as best for you as possible. So as we look going from the room that you're in to thinking about the way in which you're presenting your material, it's very important to remember that how you present is just as important, or I actually think it's more important than what you're presenting. So how you present. So this is one thing I observed, and this is true every technical conference, but even in, up at the all hands meeting in Alaska, here we have these fantastic presentations with fantastic modeling. People in the room are like 10 times smarter than I am. And I'm thinking all of this information is invaluable, right? But some of the slides were not conducive to me understanding because I'm not a climate scientist. And so if a climate scientist is trying to understand, it would be really challenging, a non-climate scientist to understand. And even if you're a climate scientist, I wouldn't assume that everybody in the room is up to the same speed that you are, especially in these cross-disciplinary projects like iHARP. You have people with different backgrounds all trying to learn and collaborate. So it's important to start from a baseline and build up and have your presentation as clear as possible. So one of the ways you can do that is what's called this assertion evidence approach. And it's a different way of making PowerPoints. You can actually download a PowerPoint package now that gives you some templates in the assertion evidence style, because the normal PowerPoint templates are awful. The ones that say like overview, data, results, conclusions, like each slide is just like that at the top. It's terrible. So assertion evidence means you have two main components for your slide. The assertion is a full sentence at the top of your slide. So like this one, research shows that green roofs are extremely effective in lowering the roof temperatures of buildings. It's a full sentence in grammatically correct English. Only the first letter is capitalized, just like a real sentence. The rest are lowercase. And this improves reading and comprehension because humans can't listen to you and read something at the same time. It's really difficult for us to process written words and spoken words simultaneously. It's also really difficult for people that are not having the same language, their same first language as the one you're presenting in. Sometimes it's easy to get lost, right? And I know this by teaching classes where we have students from all different walks of life. They've come from different backgrounds, different mother tongues, and I might speak too quickly, but if I have a nice assertion at the top, they can easily read that and catch up. And I've experienced that from the other end, going to, conferences or working in other countries. Like I worked in Germany for a while. It was really challenging for me to keep up with the German, but if they had it written, I could follow along, right? So it's helpful for those multiple ways to make sure that everyone is understanding the work. So that's your assertion, full sentence. Even using the connecting words, like they have the in there, use everything. So it's very easy to read. And then the second part of the slide is the evidence, right? So here's the evidence, graphics, very little text if possible. Here they show a normal photograph showing a green roof on a building. And then here's the temperature of the roof. So wherever there was green, the green roof part, you can see that the temperature in those locations is very low on this very easy to read temperature scale. Whereas places of the roof that were not vegetated have a higher temperature. So this is proving the assertion. This is the evidence for that assertion. So that makes for a very compelling scientific presentation, that assertion evidence approach. And people can follow along. And if they see your slides after the fact, they can still follow along without you being there. Also very easy to study from if you use this in a classroom, like for educational purposes. So this is, at Penn State, we have one of the main champions of this approach, and he's written books on it. He has created a really nice website of it. I have some links here for you that you could go to later, and they have examples, they have templates, they have people giving presentations using this approach. It really improves understanding, cognition, and everyone following along together. So, at Penn State, it's pervasive. We force everyone to use assertion evidence in classrooms and in their research. So it's available. It's spreading around the world. I go to more and more conferences that are using this approach. So if you haven't tried it yet, you should try it and see if it helps with your presentation effectiveness. So after you prepare your slides, hopefully as in assertion evidence, then share it with some people. Share it with your colleagues, share it with your friends or your family, and see if they can follow it. So I have my students, before they give a presentation, they show me their slides. And here's an example of one of my students who's working with duckweed. It's one of the things that we do. And she's a fantastic researcher. She does really great work. And this was her slide. So I'll give you a moment to just try to read it and figure this out. So normally, and I can't see all your faces, but normally when I present this, people look confused, you know, and I knew her research. When she showed me this, I was confused, and I had worked with her the whole time, and I was like, okay, what is wrong with this? So it says light intensity. That's the first thing in the assertion, light intensity. But I look down here, and what do I see? I see concentration. And then I'm like, okay, let me try to understand this graph. Okay, there's mass here. This still is not light intensity, mass over time. Where's the light intensity? And then finally you get to the key and you're like, oh, there's light intensity. And then you're like, wait, what was I supposed to know about light intensity? So you go back up to the assertion. You're like, okay, light intensity affects duckweed growth rate across concentration. So then you come back. So it's like, it's requiring too much brain power to figure out this slide, right? So I stared at it with her for a minute and I said, how about we don't change the slide, because the slide is nice for the data that we have. Just change the assertion to better support the data. So that we changed it to this. Concentration does not significantly affect duckweed growth rate. And so then you see the word concentration, you see concentrations across the top, you see duckweed growth rate, which matches what you just read. And then you see, oh, across the light intensities, there's not much change. Oh, it makes sense. So you don't have to know anything about duckweed for this to make sense, but that you're following the assertion and the data, they support each other. So doing that check, you know, just sharing with some other folks to make sure your work is clear, really, really good idea. Okay, so you got your presentation done, you've already shared it with somebody, now you have to practice. And giving presentations, it's just like any sort of sport or performing art. You know, I usually ask my audience, like, how many of you are involved or had been involved in sports teams before, or in the performing arts? Did you play in a band? Were you in a choir? Did you dance? You know, and usually if you start thinking about all of these activities, usually everyone in the audience has some experience with that. And so then I say, well, did you just like show up for a soccer match without going to practice? Did you do a dance performance without rehearsing? You know, you can ask any of these questions and people are like, no. You know, of course, there's lots of practice. A lot of time goes in before you're performing or, you know, playing a competitive sport. And presentations is the same thing. You have to practice. And so this image here of this guy, he's presenting in the bathroom in front of a mirror. That's great. Like seeing what you look like can be very helpful. And, you know, I went to a leadership training workshop with Dr. Vandana, and she and I were forced to record ourselves. Like they made us film ourselves giving this pitch over and over and over until we got it right. And then we were allowed to give it to the rest of the group. So recording yourself, just set your cell phone up, prop it on something and present to it, watch yourself. It'll be excruciating, but it's so powerful. Then after you've rehearsed and felt confident, paying attention to the way you look is important. And I think, you know, we try not to talk about that too much because we want everyone to feel included. And it's not so much, oh, you know, like in this image, they have, oh, you know, someone who looks like a woman wearing a skirt and you're wearing a tie if you're a guy. That's not what I'm talking about. It's that you should look, you know, clean and professional in clothing that makes you feel confident. You should feel powerful in whatever it is you're wearing, whatever that means for you. But, you know, showing up in like shorts and a ratty t-shirt, no one feels powerful in that, right? So, you know, whatever that professional dress means for you is what you should do so that you feel confident. Now, no matter how many times you rehearse, and especially if you don't rehearse very much, you might feel nervous. And I get this a lot. People ask me, what do I do if I'm nervous? And so I refer you, there's a great TED Talk given by Dr. Amy Cuddy, and she did research on the actual body chemistry changes that happen depending on your body language. And so she found that your body language could actually shape who you are. And it's a great TED Talk. She also talks about her personal experience, which is just amazing. She went through a traumatic brain injury while she was in school, and they told her that, that's it for her. She can't go to, going to graduate school, becoming a researcher was not for her. She could do some other kind of job, and, devastating as it happened. So she talks about all of that and how she overcame that. Now, I just checked this morning, over 72 million views. It's a really good TED Talk. You should absolutely watch it. But she's talking about taking these powerful positions like the Wonder Woman or the Superman pose, or if you've ever noticed when athletes, when they're victorious, they're like, oh, they like express themselves and make their bodies big. And so this is something we see in primates. When they feel powerful, they extend their arms and their legs. They look bigger, right? Conversely, if you look at images like this, you could imagine what these individuals are feeling, right? They look scared. Maybe they're hurt. They're worried. They're covering up their stomachs, which is our most vulnerable place. And it can actually affect you biochemically when you take those kind of poses. And this was Dr. Amy Cuddy's research, is that she found, she took different people, put them in different powerful poses or those diminutive poses. And she found that when people took a powerful pose, their testosterone levels in their blood actually went up, and that aggressive dominant hormone went up in men and women. But the cortisol stress hormone actually went down when you took a powerful pose. So acting like you're powerful actually was making these people chemically more confident as well. Whereas if they took a lower power pose and they're all curled up on themselves, their testosterone levels dropped and their stress hormones went up. So that is, it was a really powerful research. There were people who tried to repeat it. They never were able to get as much of a blood influence as she found. But the people who participated in the study said that many of them said, well, I don't care what the blood level is showing me. I feel more confident when I do this. So whether it's biochemically happening or psychologically happening, it can be impactful. So, why not try it? I mean, 2 minutes, no one needs to see you. You don't have to stand like Wonder Woman or Superman. All of these images shown here on the top, these are all considered high power poses. So you could do this while you're waiting to give your presentation. You could just be sitting there, you lean back, you extend your arms, look more confident. These ones on the bottom are the no-nos. Don't do those. I mean, these look like people are waiting in a doctor's office for some really bad, feedback. So absolutely, those are what you don't want to do. All right. So if it helps you, great. If it doesn't, you don't have to do it. But I find for me, even giving yourself 2 minutes to just focus on feeling confident before a presentation, it can just reset your mind. And that's really powerful as well. So after you're all ready, you're dressed, you're confident, got your presentation done, then get into the room. And as I mentioned before, own your space, right? So especially if you can arrive early. I tried to arrive a little bit early today, but it wasn't enough time for me to understand this interface, so I apologize. But whether you're virtual or online, getting there early, looking at your surroundings, figuring it out, making sure your presentation is loaded and that you can advance your slides, so important, right? It's not rocket science, it's obvious, but sometimes you have to tell people, get there early. It will really help you and reduce your nerves. The other nice thing about arriving early is that you may have the opportunity to interact with the audience a little bit before the start of your presentation. And that does a couple things, right? First, they get to know you and you get to know them, which reduces your anxiety. But it also establishes this connection with the audience so that they feel more likely to ask you questions or to interact with you, which is what you want, right? You want people to ask you questions. And I've watched this when I do teaching reviews of other professors. When they're teaching, I get there early as the reviewer and I'll sit in the back and I just watch how the professor interacts with the students as they're coming into the room. And some of them will just stay behind the podium and they're preparing and getting their slides loaded. They won't talk or make eye contact with anybody. But some are more like, hey, how are you doing? And they're interacting with the students. The ones that interact with the students, no surprise, are the ones who tend to get more interaction with those students throughout their class. And it's the same thing with presentations. If you look at this image, I always ask people, well, who do you think here is giving the presentation? Is it the people that are seated or the people that are standing up? And generally people get this on, right on the nose. It's these people that are standing up. They're the newbies, right? They're introducing themselves. They're going to give the presentation. So being confident, introducing yourself, getting that rapport before you start is really important. All right, so now you're ready to begin. You got there early, you're set up, you're confident. The first couple minutes of your presentation are really important. So I advise people to, I was introduced for this talk, which was fantastic, so I didn't have to do that. But if you don't have that nice person introducing you, you should introduce yourself, right? Don't assume that people know who you are, ever. You have to introduce yourself with your name and give your credentials, even if you're not if you're still a student, you can still say like, I'm studying this at this university. I mean, that still carries weight with your audience. You want them to believe what you're saying. So you have to give them a reason to believe you. Delivering your hook means like what you're going to talk about today so that they get interested. And then you want to give them a reason to stay, like why this is important. So like a confident introduction, these are the 4 basic parts of it. You say hi, my name is Rachel Brennan. And then your credentials. I'm a professor of environmental engineering. Today, I'm going to show you how effective presentations can increase your ability to get funding and get your message out for policy changes to make an impact on the world, for example. And this is important because I actually blended my hook with my credible statement. But this is important because when working with such important information as climate change, we need to get that information out to the public. So, you would rehearse it, of course. And when I do this with students, I have them try it with a partner and then they volunteer to give it to the class. But practicing that hook, it's like your elevator pitch so that it comes out nice and smooth, can really help you get off and launch your presentations nicely. The other thing, another step is to make sure that you share the big picture. And this is something that scientists and engineers seem to not do very much. We assume that everybody knows the big picture already, and we drive right into the details. It's important to bring everyone back and to, look at the whole system so that we understand what we're talking about and then show what we're focusing on today. That's very important also when knowing who your audience is. Do you have people with different backgrounds in the audience that may not know why you're doing what you're doing or the specific details? So knowing who's in your audience is also critically important. And then as you present, and I mentioned this several times today, I feel bad because I can't see you in this presentation mode. So I can't keep track of your engagement right now. When I'm live, I look at my audience all the time and I want to see this image on the left, right? I want to see people are looking at me. I can see by their facial expressions, they're tracking what I'm saying. And if they get confused, I can back up. I can ask them a question. If I see this on the right bottom and people are looking tired and bored and they're like, oh, then that's your cue that you need to mix it up. Something is not going well. And often if you haven't practiced enough, you won't be able to pivot. If you rehearse, when you see things like this, people looking sad and bored, then you'll be able to, change your pace, change your modulation, move around the room, ask them a question. That's your signal to change something up, to get them back in the moment with you. Using that space, I put it here again because it's so, so important. And when I see these things like this, where these speakers in each of these slides, they have a whole huge amount of space they could be walking in, and yet they desire to stay behind the podium. And you can see, like here in this case, she could take that microphone right off of there and walk around with it. Usually today they'll give you a lapel mic or a microphone that you can move around the room with. Take it. It makes such a huge impression. I remember when I was a new assistant professor, I had this opportunity to go present at a big conference. And I knew there were people in the room who could really impact my career and become letter writers for tenure and everything. And I was put behind a podium on a big stage that was like 50 feet away from the audience. I was so disconnected. And so what I did, I was like, oh, here we go. I took that microphone off. I jumped actually off the stage and I walked up to the audience, down into the aisle like this. It made such an impression. They told me afterwards, some of the people in the audience, it made such an impression. I think that moment, that decision, when I made to walk around that room and get close to my audience, it might have really influenced some of those people in the room, and it might have had an impact on my career. I'm not kidding. Like, those moments, they add up. It can be really impactful. The other thing, if you're stuck on Zoom like we are, is it's hard sometimes, you know, especially if you haven't had an experience in theater or performance, or you're not a naturally outgoing person. It can be hard to make your face look excited. And so I used to, when my best friend in graduate school was very shy, and I was encouraging her, take an improv class, take a theater class so you can get more expressive. You know, finally she did, and it really improved her ability to present. But I love to show these pictures of Michelle Obama because she has this wonderful face when she presents. You know, I don't care about politics of this. That's not my point. I'm just saying, like, even with the podium, you can't see the rest of her body, but you can see her face. And wow, do you want to listen, right? So it can be really good to have a nice, expressive face. The way you modulate your voice, you can look at stuff on this online, making sure that you leave pauses, that your voice goes up and down, that you're not using too many slang words or acronyms. Those things you should know, right? But really record yourself to check, to see how fast you're talking. I know I talk too fast. This is a chronic problem for me. But I've learned over time to try to add in more pauses, to look at my audience, gauge if they're tracking me, right? So recording yourself, though, will really help you out. And then as you present, rather than just trying to get the data across, challenge yourself to present it more like a story. And, you know, with like, the reason we need to do this, that's like the challenge, right? Like that's like the hero in the story is trying to figure this thing out, and you take the people through that story arc of the challenges, and then you collect this data, and then you're figuring out what it means, and these are the potential implications. So you take them through this arc rather than just, this is the data, this is the data, this, it's a subtle thing, but trying to tell it like a story can really improve the audience ability to follow you. And even the way you present your data, like we already talked about assertion evidence, this data is really noisy. This is from a field site I worked on a long time ago. Field data is noisy like this. Old days, you just label this with pH, or something. It could be like metals concentrations or whatever. That doesn't tell me anything about why I'm sharing this data. If you actually go in and put an assertion in there, that someone can read and say, like, oh, crab shell, which is CS in this plot, those double the longevity of the treatment systems, and that will reduce cost. So I'm telling them, okay, so now I can see everywhere there's crab shell. Oh, look, it lasts a lot longer, and that will make less money need to go into these systems. I'm giving them the reason right there. At the end of your presentation, don't forget to summarize. Very important to tell them what you want them to remember and what they can do about it. So like some of my presentations, I'm talking about this ecological water treatment system that I operate. And I say, just remember, it should be able to do more than just treat water. It should also be able to make food and generate energy. So I just bring it back home to what I want them to remember from that. Or you could say what you want them to do. Right? So reminding them, never dump your medicines down the drain, producing these endocrine disruptors in the environment. You want to use these safe products, avoid using things like phthalates and antimicrobial agents and these estrogen mimickers, which is another area that I work in. But giving them a reminder right before you close out, because they'll remember the last thing that you say. Finally, step 9 out of 10 steps here, end your presentation the same way you started it, with confidence. I see so many people end with, any questions? But what does that do? That's like your voice is going up. You sound unsure of yourself. And also it makes the audience like confused. Like they want you to be done. Like right now, you want me to finish, right? You want me to end with confidence. And so instead of saying any questions, just say thank you. And then the moderator, if there's one, they'll manage the time and see if there's time for questions. You don't need to ask them if they want questions. If you really feel the need to ask for questions, you can say, thank you, I'm happy to take any questions. But you don't even really need to say that. As long as you just say thank you and end, that would be fantastic. The last tiny key, step 10, is when you close out, don't just finish on your last data or your thank you to your sponsors, which is important to do, but make your final slide visually interesting. You can show photos of what you were working on and your contact information with your name. This is really important because if there's not enough time for questions, just like today, because we had this technical glitches at the beginning and throughout, by me giving you my contact information, maybe you can follow up with me later. And that's great for conferences and opportunities like this, right? And so you end with a nice visually pleasing slide that can be on through the Q&A session with your contact information. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Brennan.
Sure.
If we have, and you can see all the emojis in there. I don't know if you can, but anyway. So if we can have a question or two from the audience. Maria, please.
Hi, this was very compelling presentation, but I want to ask you something about the first project that you showed, I can't see now the slides, Drawdown.
Yes.
Yeah, how do you measure the impact of that project in the public or in a community of researchers? What types of impact measures, web impact measures, search engine optimization impact measures, or I don't know, usability studies? What do you do to measure really that the message is being distributed, that there's impact, that people are learning, etc.?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So for us at the university, I mean, we ask students, we have like the standard questionnaires before, like when they come in to our RU program for the undergraduate students at the beginning of the summer, asking them questions related to what they call their self-efficacy. Do they feel like they understand climate change? Do they feel empowered to implement strategies? Do they feel they can talk to the public? Do they want, do they think they might do research in the future or policy? We ask them those questions at the beginning and the end, and we track improvements in their self-efficacy. So that's how we measure the effectiveness of the Drawdown Scholars Program. As far as implementation in the communities, that's really what Project Drawdown is doing. So even though we, at the university level, we try to work with partners that need something, it's up to Project Drawdown to actually do the real implementation because we're just not equipped at the university level. So while that's a fantastic question, I don't think I can really answer that fully, how they're measuring their impact, other than they could actually measure if a strategy is implemented, how much CO2 equivalents they're removing from the environment. That's their measure of success. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry I didn't have more for you, Maria.
So we're right now, but one of the requests was if the slides could be shared, if that's possible.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that would be wonderful. And again, thank you so much, because this is so important for our team of scientists here who are so good with the technical work, but they need to learn to be able to relay or convey what they're sharing in a more comfortable and interesting way. So thank you so much, Dr. Brennan. We'll definitely get the slides and share them. And for any follow-up questions, sure, Dr. Brennan, we have her. She's actually on our advisory board. So even if you check our iHARP website, you'll definitely see her contact information and you can reach out to her. Maria, did you have one more question? I see your hand up or comment. Oh, okay. All right. So thank you all again for joining us, and Dr. Brennan, thank you so much for your time. This is so interesting. I know the technical glitches, but all the same, you made it work. And we'll watch the TED Talk. We'll watch the trailer. We look forward to all of that. Thank you so much.
Go Penn State.
Thank you all.
Good one.